So if you would give this other person and their story compassion, we have to just flip that script and give it right back to yourself.
Welcome to the Secrets of Being podcast. I'm Dr. Dawn Earhart Whitty, your guide on a transformative journey of personal development and discussions of universal truths. Join me and a panel of life coaches and spiritual leaders from around the world discussing how to handle some of life's greatest challenges. We will be sharing stories of love, faith, and inspiration with you, our faithful listeners, to live your happiest and most fulfilling life, full of purpose and passion for yourself, your families, and the world. We are here to be the change we wish to see. Let the conversation begin. Hello, and welcome to the Secrets Being podcast. Today, I am honored to be joined by Dr. Lesley Goth. Lesley is an award-winning author, speaker, and a licensed clinical psychologist. She helps sexual assault survivors overcome shame and self-blame by guiding them through self-compassion and empowerment. And I love that because we all need that self-empowerment and self-compassion. I think we're so hard on ourselves.
So hard
Well,
on ourselves.
welcome, Dr. Lesley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dr. Dawn. I'm so excited about our time.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. So I know you've got things after this, so we're not going to have a long conversation, but I think we probably could have like days long
Probably
conversation.
could, yes.
But I always like to start this show with a quote, and I found a quote from you, and you said, "I've liberated myself from the need for approval from others." And whoa, that was so powerful because how many of us live our lives seeking external validation from other people when we have what we need within us?
Absolutely.
Can you
Absolutely.
talk a little bit about that and when you got to that realization on your journey? I mean, that wasn't not something
Yeah,
forever.
I mean, I think it's still growing and evolving and strengthening, right, all the time because it's much easier said than done. And it could depend on how tired I am that day or if I've eaten well that day, also, like how vulnerable I might be feeling from moment to moment. So, and I think other people can relate to that too. But in general, I remember reading Brene Brown, and something in what she wrote really stood out to me, where it was like she's on stage, she's loved and beloved by so many, and it could be that one critical comment or one critical email that she gets that just kind of sticks with her. And she came up with this great, way to kind of, it was a great hack, right? And she just writes down the name of two or three people that really mattered to her on a sticky note. She loves sticky notes. And she writes down the names of those two people of what, two or three that really, really matter what they think. And these people just aren't anybody. They are safe people. They're the people that really know her. They really understand her. And if they do have something kind of hard to talk to her about, they will do it with love and compassion. They're not going to come at her with shame and judgment and things like that. So if someone is giving her feedback that, is not so positive, and then it kind of like hits her right there in the heart, or she starts to, worry about how people see her and she's feeling judged. She thinks, well, wait a second, is this person on my list? And that has really stuck with me. I've had so many situations where I've gotten criticized or more than criticized, like really raked over the coals. And then I'd be like crushed. Oh my God, nobody likes me. And then I thought, is this person on my list? Do I even know this person? Do I respect this person? And if I don't, why am I giving them that energy? Why am I giving them that time and space in my mind or my heart to impact me in my life and how I get to show up in this world? So that's something I practice all the time, all the time.
I loved that you said that because I heard when I was working with Laura Swan, who is this beautiful, wonderful woman that does these circles in San Diego, and she told me that you need to hear it only takes one negative thing and it to every like 16 positive things. So we could hear
Exactly.
16 times, you're wonderful, you're great, great job. But one person says something negative and it crushes us. And why do you think that is?
Gosh, that is such a good question. I'm not sure I even have the answer. We could really like sit and ponder on that. Maybe because, to some degree, we all have parts of ourselves that are just very insecure and we need to feel safe. And getting any kind of positive feedback creates that sense of safety, even if it's just the temporary, right? And so maybe we all need to work on really feeling more like concrete in who we are and that we can stand in that so that if something does kind of hit us up across the head, it doesn't really knock us over. We might sway a little bit, but we can come right back. So that way, all those positives far outweigh that one negative. I think as a society, we could probably all benefit from really kind of doing more of that work of knowing who we are, believing in ourselves, loving ourselves. So that way, when that negative does come up, it's like, it is like water off a duck's back, right? That's the goal.
Yeah. And I've contemplated that a lot because when I heard that, the first time I heard that, I was like, wow. And I think it might have something to do with our primitive mind, like the survival. Like we look out for danger. So that one negative thing, that's our mind keeping us safe, saying, oh, danger. But we don't need that anymore because we don't need that for survival.
I would agree with that theory. And that makes me think of like attachment theory, when we're little and we're, those initial attachments in our lives. And unless they're absolutely solid and secure, then we're going to have those insecurities and we're going to fear rejection, abandonment. That always might be something that's just kind of lurking beneath the surface. And so a criticism comes our way and we feel rejected. Nobody likes to feel rejected. Nobody. I don't care how much self-esteem you have. Nobody likes to feel rejected. So what you just said, as far as that primitive mind, right? Then I think about, well, what are our earliest attachments like? What has that instilled in us? And, I mean, hopefully our attachments are solid and safe and secure, but so many of us struggle without those safe attachments. And that leaves us more vulnerable to those than criticisms when we're adults.
Yeah. When my girls were little, they were like 5 and 4. And I remember telling them, if anybody ever tells you you're weird, take that as a compliment. And I have told
Oh,
them that their whole lives. And I think that they have a very healthy self-esteem
I
because
love that.
nothing can penetrate them. They know that they're perfect, they're loved, they matter. And so they carry that. And so it does just roll off. And not always, right? Because they're human. But
Right.
I think I planted those seeds that were strong
Those
enough
are
for them to be able to.
fabulous, big, chunky seeds that you have planted in them, and that's beautiful. Yes.
Well, you talk about self-compassion, and I think part of the secrets of being is for us all to learn compassion for others, for sure, but sometimes we forget to direct that towards ourselves. What does that look like to you? And then how do you suggest people practice more self-compassion in their own lives?
And I love this question. And this is what I'm so passionate about is helping people develop, a stronger self-compassion because it is just so few and far between. I think it is easier to look at someone else's story or their situation and feel, that it's not their fault, that, you can understand their situation and have compassion for their pain and suffering. But we tend to like hold ourselves to different standards and expectations. And that's the problem. And what I always tell my clients is we all play by the same rules. No one's playing by a different set of rules. We're all in the same ring. We're all playing by the same rules. And so if you would give this other person and their story compassion, we have to just flip that script and give it right back to yourself. We all play by the same rules. You don't have different, higher expectations than this person over here. And it's easier said than done, but that's the work. And the shame that people carry from, early, this again goes back to those early attachments where we learn, whether it's overt or covertly, that we are not good enough, that we're responsible for the emotions of the adults around us, and we learn to be people pleasers. And when we're not people pleasing, we're again worried about that rejection and abandonment. And if we're rejected, it means I'm bad. Right. And so then if bad things happen, it must be my fault. And now we are really swimming in a lot of shame. So in order to build self-compassion, it's if your story, if my story was someone else's, you would be like, yes, Lesley, that's not your fault. You're not bad. Of course, this happened to you. And of course, you handled it this way. You did the best you could. This is what we would say to people. We have to be able to turn that around and look at ourselves under the same lens, under the same light, and realize that we're all playing by those same exact rules. It's no different.
Mm.
I love that. One of the things that helped me, and this was an aha moment for me, and I only got this a few years ago, but I remember thinking because I was mentally, verbally abusing myself because I didn't do something right or whatever it was. And I remember saying, you would never speak to your daughters that way. You would never speak to a friend that way. Why would you speak to yourself that way?
Mhm.
My one of my friends, I just had a conversation with her the other day, and she said many years ago she was doing that to herself, but she was saying it out loud to me. And I said, "Hey, stop talking about my friend that way." And she said that voice has stuck in her head ever since that conversation.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, we just don't really, we just, it's so automatic to be negative towards ourselves, critical. And what often happens in addition to just our own self-talk, it's we've integrated a critical voice, right? We've internalized someone else's voice. It could be a mom, it could be a dad, it could be a coach, it could be a teacher, it could be someone else outside of ourselves that, we feel we weren't good enough for. And we kind of not kind of, we do. We subconsciously internalize that voice. That's actually the voice that we're hearing. No one is born feeling like crap about themselves, right? We don't come flying out of the womb like I'm bad. No, we come out of the womb and we're just these innocent little blobs that just need love, care, safety, security, food, shelter, that kinds of stuff. So where did we learn that we're not good enough, we're bad, that we're responsible for everybody else's feelings and everybody else's well-being, right? Those are learned thoughts and feelings and behaviors. So if we can kind of unpack whose voice is that in your head? Where did you learn you're not good enough, you're bad? And again, that's where if your story, if you're that 5-year-old kid who learned you were bad, right? It starts there. What if it was someone else's 5-year-old kid? Would you look at that kid and say, yeah, you are bad? No, of course not. I live right across the street from a school, from an elementary, and I see little ones running all over the place all the time. And I'm like, just think about all those little kiddos out there. And I'm wondering how many of them, little sweethearts, are feeling bad about themselves. What messages are they already starting to internalize?
Yeah, and that's one of the that drives me in some of the work that I do, especially when I'm working with children, is I want to plant those seeds in their hearts and their souls that they matter and they're valuable and they have something that only they can bring to this world. I'm very passionate about that because I didn't have a lot of that, in my world growing up. And so I don't want any child to ever feel like they're unloved or that they don't matter because they all do. We all do. We come onto this earth, we all matter.
Saying exactly, exactly.
Yeah, so okay, I wanted to touch briefly on this. I don't want to go too much into it, but one of the things that I've learned is that when we go through something traumatic, that literally, even though we can rationalize maybe mentally about whatever happened, that gets stored in our body, in our
Absolutely.
in and I want you to talk a little bit about that because I didn't really understand that until I went through some meditations and things and worked on that. I literally had a somatic release. And it was funny because I didn't even know what that term meant at the time, but I kept thinking it. So I looked it up. I'm like, this is exactly what's happening. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So I want to explain it in kind of just, I like to kind of just talk in really easy to understand terms. And I'll explain it with an example of something that happened in my life. It was 1994. It was the Northridge earthquake in California. It was 4
Was
a.m.
here.
Okay, okay, girl. So I mean, I was thrown from my bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it sounded like a train was going through my apartment. All my dish, the kitchen just was like everything just came flying out of the cupboards and crashing down on the floor. And I was just hearing all the sounds and I was feeling the movement in my body, and it was terrifying. Pitch black. I had no clothes. I had no flashlight. Like I couldn't find my cat. It was just terrifying. Fast forward, could be 10, 20 years. I'm here in Colorado. I'm sitting in a building, kind of a taller building. And I could have sworn the building was moving. I mean, I could have sworn because it was a really windy day. And I could have sworn I was swaying. I wasn't, but there was there was something that was getting triggered in my body. There was something somatic, right? I was getting a sense of something. Maybe it's because I was hearing the wind or something, and it triggered movement because the trauma of that earthquake got stored in my body.
Yeah.
Cognitively, I knew it worked. decades ahead of time, right? I'm not even in California anymore. I'm in Colorado. I'm safe. My body and my heart started to beat faster. And I was like, am I okay? Am I safe? Right. And I was like, okay, I looked around myself. I'm safe. It's okay. This is a PTSD reaction. So this is what happens, when we're in a trauma, we're not using the frontal lobe. We're not using this part of our brain where we have logic and reason and understanding. We are in the trauma brain. You are in the amygdala where you have fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. There's no rationality to that part of our brain. It is survival, survival, survival. That is it. That's why there's no judgment on whatever survival, thing your brain goes to, right? If you fight, you flee, you freeze, you fawn. People tend to shame themselves because I fawned or I froze. Why didn't I fight? It's okay. You were just trying to survive. So all of what we go through, no matter what the trauma, we are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That reaction, that response gets stored in the body until it gets processed, till you have that somatic release and you have the opportunity to release what the cells have kind of held on to in case it happens again. We have to be prepared, right? We have to know how to survive. It's just total instinct. I hope
Yeah.
that
Yeah. I was in that earthquake too. And I was so, I wanted to move. I wanted to move. I'm from Ohio. So this was, and I'd been through a few earthquakes prior to that, but that was a big one. And if
the
you lived
biggest.
in LA at the time, you
Yeah.
remember that one
Yeah.
for sure. Well, and I know I've listened to you talk about EMDR therapy to help release that trauma. I know there are other ways, like I did it through meditation and we were like yelling and screaming as loud as we could. That was what worked for me. But can you talk a little bit about EMDR and how that works?
Yes, I love EMDR because it uses the eye movement like we have in REM sleep, right? When we're sleeping, our eyes are moving back and forth, our brain is dreaming, we're trying to process something that doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to necessarily be intense trauma. It could be, why was that lady wearing a pink polka dotted blouse in the grocery store? I don't understand that. It could be anything random and benign to something very severe and like where the brain just wants the period at the end of the sentence. Something that doesn't make sense, we tend to dream about. So EMDR, the eye movement, creates the same eye movement as in REM sleep. And so that bilateral stimulation in the brain helps us connect to the amygdala. It's that small little teeny peanut-sized part of the brain at the base of the skull and top of the spinal cord. And that's where our trauma brain is. We cannot access the trauma brain by talking. That's where we're using the frontal lobe. We're using our logic and reason. We have to get into the emotional part of that brain that's holding all the somatic thoughts, feelings, and body sensations associated with our trauma. So the eye movement, the bilateral stimulation, helps us unlock whatever we're trying to work on that's stuck in the back of the brain, brings it to the front of the brain, where you can then make sense of it and put it in its proper place. It's called adaptive information processing. We're taking something that we can't make sense of it, and by the bilateral stimulation, we are creating adaptive information. Now we're understanding it with a different lens, with different eyes. If you had childhood trauma, now you can finally see it with your adult eyes and your adult brain and make sense of it. Oh, of course it wasn't her fault. You know what I mean? Of course it wasn't his fault. You were just a child, that kind of a thing. Because in trauma, we feel so out of control, right? That's what trauma is. It's a stripping away of our power and our control. And we tend to blame ourselves. So when we can process that and understand it wasn't my fault, that is such a huge release. It's such a huge empowering way it has to happen to be able to move forward.
Oh, well, thank you for that explanation. And I have not done any EMDR treatments, but I've heard very good things about that. But I think I heard you say on another podcast something about walking or somebody who doesn't. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
Francine Shapiro, who found EMDR, right? She was out here in Boulder, and she was going to Naropa, I believe she was going to. I think this is the story, and she was upset one day, and she went for a walk. She's walking, walking, walking. Well, when we walk, it creates bilateral stimulation. Anything that goes back and forth in the body, dancing, right? Any kind of anything, swimming, right? It creates that bilateral stimulation, and she realized after walking, hey, I'm not as upset anymore. I wonder why. And so she started to study the bilateral stimulation that was happening in the brain as she was walking, and thus came EMDR. So yeah, so going for walks, that's why we often feel better after we go for a walk or a run and things like that, right? So walking is really great. Anything that creates that movement from side to side, that kind of back and forth, we tend to feel better when we're done.
Mm. I love that. I love that because, not everybody can afford therapy. So for people that can't have it or don't have access, then, doing things for themselves, that could be like a really useful tool for them. And first and foremost, realize it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Release the shame, release the guilt, and
Absolutely.
protect yourself. And again, back to the self-compassion. Be compassionate with yourself.
Again, if you go for a walk and you're upset about something and you think, well, if this, or you're blaming yourself and carrying that shame, and you go for a walk and you think, well, if this was my best friend or my daughter, like you said, or my mom or someone else, someone else that I love and care about, would I feel the same way about them? And if not, you got to play by the same rules. You just gotta. And I do want to add that aside from EMDR therapy being very, very powerful, I've also done some deep breath work, and like it was a breath work class. And that, like you having that somatic release, I had a massive somatic release in that breathwork class. It was like an hour long class. And I don't think I've ever cried and released as much as in that class. So there's other ways to process and somatically release how the trauma does get stored in the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's not a joke when you release that stuff somatically because I woke up feeling like I got hit by a train. I had a headache, my body hurt. I felt like I had the flu, but I didn't. I wasn't
Right.
even sick. And it was
Right.
just that one day. So
Yep.
it's a real thing. And again, I had not experienced that before. So it's good. Get it out, release it. Don't leave that stuck in your body.
And we can do that with yoga, right? We can do that with at-home yoga. So like you're saying, if it's not affordable, you can start doing mindfulness exercises at home, mindful meditation, yoga classes on YouTube in the comfort of your own home. You can go for walks. These things don't cost anything, right?
Yeah.
So there's a range of resources that's out there to start, processing, but again, to be open to inviting in that self-compassion because it's such a
Yes.
healing process.
Well, Dr. Lesley, I know we have a hard stop in a few minutes, but I wanted you to leave our listeners with one final thought, like one wisdom piece of nugget that you want our viewers to take away from, and also then let everybody know where they can find you, where they can connect with you, and we'll include all that in the show notes as well.
I always love when I'm asked this question. The first thing that always comes to my mind is I want to share hope that healing is always possible. And I work with so many people who have had a lot of trauma in their life. And they say to me, like, when is this going to be over? When am I going to be out of this pain? And it's a long process and it's hard to hold on to that hope. So I just want to give a shot. I want to give a shot of hope to anyone who might be hearing this, that healing is always, always possible. Just stick in there, do the work, take it one day at a time, be open to inviting in that self-compassion because we can't heal without it. And just know like you deserve to heal. So that's what I would want people to know. And then people can find me on TikTok. I'm at Lesley Goth, Instagram, I'm at Trauma Healer 11. And my website is denverfamilycounselingservices.com. So those are great ways to find me.
Oh, wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your wisdom, and your heart with us today. And I wish you nothing but the best. And
Thanks. I love it. I love being able to talk about this and it's just so important. And thank you for creating the space to do so, really.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure to do so because, again, I want people to feel hopeful. I want them to live happy lives and because it's contagious, right? When you're happy, you don't go around insulting people and putting them down because that's not within your heart. So that's how we make the world a better place by all coming to a good place within us.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you,
Okay.
Dr.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lesley, and thank you all for watching The Secrets of Being.
Thank you for tuning in to the Secrets of Being podcast. We appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with more inspiring content. For further inspiration, visit thesecretsofbeing.com and join our community. Until next time, stay inspired and keep unlocking the secrets of being.